Hello everybody. I'm doing another video where I demonstrate one of the things that I vend. It's also very popular. I've gotten a lot of compliments on my ribs, and I've done a lot of work over the last few years to really make them much better. My rib game has went from mediocrity and meh to something that I consider exceptional, and I've had a lot of ribs. And I'm at the point now where if I ever get ribs out at a restaurant or whatever, I just end up getting pissed because they're not cooked right, or the membrane's still on, or they're overdone. I don't know. It's frustrating whenever I try to go out and get food, especially like hot wings or anything. Very frustrating to have to be constantly disappointed. So I figured I would start from square one, where the other day I started basically at the end. So this is the unwrapped pack. This is the kind of ribs I start with. It's good. I don't really know what breed of pig they are, and it doesn't really matter. So this is your standard 3-pack of baby back ribs. I like to do spare, but I've learned that people like to eat baby back more than they like to eat spare. There's a lot of different reasons why spare make better ribs than baby back, in my opinion. But when people are served ribs, unless they are specifically asking for spare ribs, they're expecting baby back. So I try to meet people with what they want rather than what I think is the best. So let's begin. Anatomy of this cut. If you look at the baby back ribs, they are the ones that are right next to the spine. If you look at the St. Louis cut, it would be these ribs right here. Then if you look at the spare ribs, it would be right here. So the spare ribs, all that cartilage, that's what hooks into the breastbone. That's why it's there, and that's why sometimes you can get untrimmed spare ribs with the breastbone still attached. That's the sternum. And yeah, that's not a really good cut of meat. But the baby backs, they're right next to the spine in the back, and they make for some really good ribs. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna unwrap them. And if we go over here to the sink, so I undo them in the sink, because if you look, these are vacuum wrapped from the factory, and there's a lot of this packing goo in here. Like, this stuff's gross. You don't want this on your wings. Like this fluid here. It's just gross. So what I'm gonna do, and it smells bad. But just because it smells bad doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. It just smells bad because it's dead flesh. So I'm gonna open it up here so that it automatically starts draining down into the sink. And always have a fresh sink of cleaning, sanitizing water ready to use before you ever even open it, before you expose these pathogens. Make sure that you're ready to clean and you're not touching things. Anytime you ever touch anything else after these ribs, make sure you sanitize your hands. Super important. Food safety. So see how it's draining out? It's going to continue to drain. And see how the vacuum has released the seal. Got an air pocket in there. Now we can just go in here and just open it up. Alright. Now, ribs are a lot more complicated than the pork shoulder that I made. And rightly so. There's a lot more going on with them. Pork shoulder is just shredded hunk of flesh. This, a bunch of different sections to the ribs. They're very cartilaginous. And got a lot of connective tissue, so you have to cook them a specific way in order to get them just right. So now that I have my ribs right here, rinse the knife off a little bit, dip my hands in the sanitizing solution. We're going to rinse them off, get some of this packing juice off. And you don't want a lot of pressure on this because it'll get splatters everywhere. You really just want a little bit. See how that goo, how that water's pink? That's gross. We're getting this out of here. Getting all that pink water off until the water runs clear. So, see, if we wash that out, see how the water's clear now? That's what you want. That's good enough. Alright, so we're going to brush them a little bit with our hands. And then, same way with the third one. We're just going to run it until the water runs off clear. Alright, now we're going to look down in the bottom of the sink, and you see that goo right there? That is still goo. So we're going to wash these ribs until this water in the bottom of the sink runs clear too. Because we don't want any of this packing juice on the ribs. That's gross. All right, so now we're gonna maybe give it a little more gas. All right, more volume. All right, so now, yep, we look at the bottom of the sink and it's clear. Now, we're almost there. Now we look, all right, the water's pretty clear enough. All right, so now we're gonna sanitize this because I touched it with my pork hands. So you notice in a theme here, every time I touch anything besides the, or after I touch the pork, it always gets dipped into the sanitizing solution. So, all right, so let's just pick one out. So like I mentioned in my pork video, I like to try to eliminate unnecessary variables. And there's a lot with ribs. If you look up, how to do perfect ribs, they're going to tell you that you want to put mustard on them, or put vinegar on them, or soak them in something, or marinate. Like, there's a million different ways. And I have found that almost none of that contributes to the end product. But there's things that I have found that do significantly contribute to the end product is removing this membrane. This is the single most important thing to boost the quality of your ribs, besides, of course, the cooking temperatures and times. But as far as prep, this is the most important thing. All of the other stuff, not that important, as long as you put a good rub on there. The rub is important, but this is very important. And how we do this is we come in here and we get a little, we're going to find us a little corner, right? We're going to peel up this membrane ever so slightly. And, once you do a whole bunch of these, you'll get really good at it. It's annoying, and it does take time. So now we got us an edge. All right, so now we're going to take paper towels. We're going to take our paper towels, and we are going to basically pinch this up. Now, see how I've got it here? If you come in, zoom in here. See this little lip that we've made, this little gap? We're going to pinch that with a dry spot of the paper towel with our fingers. Pinch it and pull it. See that? We're making more. All right, see, an intermediate. Now, you wouldn't do this stop stuff. See how we're making a little pocket right there? All right, that's what you want. So get that dry piece of your paper towel and just pull it up. Sometimes you'll get really lucky and you'll get it all in one pull. See how I'm going back and I'm getting one on the back too? Pull it back and do like this. So now we've got us a good start. See how we have here? This membrane has got to come off. So get it to start like this, and then you just gently, very gently and carefully pull this membrane off. They call this silver skin. See how I wrap it around my finger to keep tension on it? They call this a lot of different things, but it's just a membrane. It goes on the inside of your rib cage. Keep all the fluids where they need to be. All right, so see how I'm getting real lucky? I'm going slow, I'm taking my time. You'll notice that if you go slow and take your time, you'll get done a lot faster than if you're trying to do this and you screw up a whole bunch of times. All right, see, that membrane almost came off in one piece. And we're just gonna throw this away, it's gross. We don't need it. Now we're gonna go and get the rest of it. So we have this little bit right here, came up. See, pinch it with a dry spot and pull it. All right, now we're gonna trim them up a little bit. Now we trim. Things I'm looking for, stuff like this. This is pretty gross. People don't really want to eat it. So we're just going to go ahead and get this. It's also not very aerodynamic. These are subject to the same things that the pork butt is. It will burn and it will not be pleasant. So here we go. I'm going to get this off of here. It's not going to be good to eat. Okay. And these don't have to be perfect either. But you're going to be whipping through these when you do 10, 15, 20 racks. And you got an hour and a half to do them. Let's see. All right, let's flip it over. We're just going to do an examination. All right, so push it apart, pull it. This is going to be good. This is thick. This is thick. So we're going to actually position this part towards the reverse flow. So if you think about the way that the convective forces work inside of the pit, It flows from the fire pit up over the reverse flow plate, and that is where the heat is going to first make contact with the meat. As it flows over it, the back end is going to get a lot less heat exposure. So the front end is where we're going to put the thick part. So we're going to position this inside the pit with this facing the direction that the smoke initially comes from. And that will attempt, and it's not perfect, but it's better than not doing it, to make the item cook more evenly. So I'll trim this off. What I'm trimming here is I'm trying to get everything flat and smooth and as aerodynamic as I can without sacrificing a whole lot of the meat, because the meat is good. Also don't want a huge amount of fat, because these ribs are very fatty. Very. They're the leanest portion of the rib on the pig, but that doesn't mean that they're lean. They're still very fatty. If you look at St. Louis, those are intermediate. And then spare ribs with the St. Louis cut and the cartilage that goes to the breastbone, those are by far the fattiest cuts of the meat. And, you know, they're delectable. That's one of the reasons why I like to use them over the baby back in my own cooking. But, like I said, people want baby back. So that's what we make. All right, so here's how I'm going to prep these ribs. I start by flipping it over. We have our membraneless. I'll grab this. And now we're just going to sprinkle the rub. Now, did you notice that we didn't dry these off? We didn't put mustard on here. We didn't put vinegar on here. We didn't treat these with anything. Now, you're going to find all kinds of resources that tell you that that is just an imperative step. And if you skip that, they're ruined. And I'm going to say that through my experimentation, which I have done an extensive amount on perfecting these ribs, that does not make a difference, a significant difference at all in the outcome of the final product. I have not noticed it either way. But what we are doing is the same way with the pork butt. We're going to let it sit for a second, and we're going to let these crystals draw up some of this water, and that's going to help bring it into like a more cake state. That way it doesn't just fall off. And if you notice, we didn't overdo it either. So flip it over. Now we're going to do this side. And I'm not going crazy with this rub. I'm not being super generous, but you want to use less than you'll use for a pork butt too. It's much more noticeable. You got a lot less just mass of meat that you're trying to get. So we're going to push it gently where we want it to be. Just gently. We're not smearing it all over. Just patting it and pushing it. That's it. That's all we're doing. Okay? So if you remember my pork butt video, we just poured it on there. You do not want to do that with ribs. You'll ruin them like that. I'm going to put a little more. If you notice over here, see how this side's lacking a little bit. We'll sprinkle a little more here. It won't hurt. But we're not going anywhere near the level of crazy that we did with the pork butts. And that's because the pork butt's like 7 pounds of meat. How much meat do we actually have here? Edible meat. Not a whole lot. And they're not very thick either. So we're going to look at the other side and look at this edge. We're going to do the same. The gentle coating. We're not getting crazy with it. Also, if you do this on a table like I've got right here, make sure there's nothing on the bottom shelf. Because these little pork sprinkles, they're contaminants. They've got, they'll contaminate your other stuff. And you don't want to do that. So, this is one prepped rack of ribs. It is ready to go. We're going to let it cake up for a little bit. And then I will show you how I position it on the pit and demonstrate what I was talking about. But I'm only going to do that when the other racks are ready, because we want to keep everything even. So for right now, what we're going to do is we're just going to put them in holding and prep our other 2 racks.